topic that we'll essentially try to cover in the panel session today. So as finance marketers are really looking to unleash digital growth, there are a few internal and external challenges or opportunities, as Ravi would love to call them. So internally, some of the trends that we see internal to the organization that we are really seeing is, number one, growth is really becoming the focal point for marketing leaders, the metric by which marketing really gets measured. In fact, there's a very interesting Forrester report that talks about how the best of the marketing leaders will be held accountable for growth, and that's really what they're going to become really good at. And the second channel, which I think the second challenge, which sort of Ravi touched upon as well, and of course David touched upon as well, is really that marketers have to deal with a lot of siloed data and systems, so which is making customer-centric marketing a little challenging. And again, externally too, we are seeing a lot of challenges. Number one, the increasing digital touch points on which a consumer could potentially interact with the brand, so that's one. And we are really moving into a post-GDPR and post-Cambridge Analytica world, right? So I guess what we'll try to do in this panel today is really cover some of these and to see how finance marketers are really addressing this. I think if you look at the panel, there's a very interesting trend here. We are really covering the spectrum of different sub-verticals here within finance. So we've got life, we've got home, we've got health, and we've got security. So all four is sort of getting very nicely covered here. It happened by chance, but I'm so happy that it did. So I'll introduce the panelists one by one, and may I request that you just sort of come on stage. So I'll go with Anika first. So Anika Agarwal is the Senior Vice President and Head of Marketing, Digital and Direct Sales, Max Bupa Health Insurance. She's a seasoned marketing professional. Anika joined Max Bupa in 2011 as the Head of Marketing. She's responsible for the overall brand strategy and marcom for the brand. She leads brand planning, communications, digital and social media, consumer insights, loyalty and customer relationship management for Max Bupa. She's been instrumental in positioning Max Bupa as a preferred family health insurer and making Max Bupa one of the most talked about brands in the segment. She actually conceptualized Max Bupa Walk for Health, the brand's most ambitious campaign and one of the most successful health initiatives in the country. With over 13 years of WorkX, Anika has a wealth of marketing experience across India, Middle East and African markets. And prior to joining Max Bupa, Anika spent more than 6 years in Nokia India and Nokia Corporation. Anika also had a brief stint at the Indian Cellular Association as the Deputy Director Projects. Thank you so much for joining, Anika. I'll invite Anuradha next. Anuradha Sriraman, she's the Head of Digital Direct Channels and Aggregators at Royal Sundaram. Overall 15 plus years of experience in digital marketing, content management, digital project management, digital sales and digital media spend management. She is also part of the founding e-business team to set up the direct channel for Royal Sundaram. So thank you, Anuradha, for joining. I appreciate it. We'll go with Daksh next. Daksh, are you there? Yeah, there you are. Yeah. Daksh Singh is the Head of Analytics at Aegon Life Insurance and has been instrumental in setting up data analytics practice at Aegon. Daksh comes with more than 10 years experience in marketing analytics and its applications in the insurance industry. He has led business intelligence practice at ICICI Prudential prior to joining Aegon. Thank you so much, Daksh, for joining. And last but not least, we've got Jamit. Where's Jamit? Right there. There you are, Jamit. Yeah. Jamit Doshi is EVP at Kotak Securities, heading marketing, product and platform to drive consumer-led strategic projects. Regular speaker at industry forums talking about intersection of digital, consumer insights and marketing techniques. And he's also the winner of the Digital Marketer of the Year Insurance at the IAMAI 2016. Thank you so much, Japan, for joining. So as you can see, we have really a stellar panel lined up, and my job as moderator is going to be to grill them and make them come up with all the secret sauce that they use. So that's really what I'm going to attempt in the next 45-50 minutes. So let's start with a sort of warm-up question for each of you. I'll go around, and maybe Anika, you could start first, right? So when we think of digital growth, obviously the one thing that really comes to mind is data and how data is getting used. So the first question that I really want to pose, and especially since we have a spectrum of sub-verticals within finance here, is what does data really mean in the context of your industry when you think about growth? What does it mean, and what are some of the big opportunities that you're already starting to tap into from a data perspective? Let's just start with you, Anika.
Sure. So if you look at industries like health insurance, actually, there are places where there are rich sources of data available. So while we're not really a high transaction category like in e-commerce or let's say a banking space, we have lots of customer information and sensitive customer information available to us. So right from the time when he onboards, we have a large amount of information that we capture. Sometimes, your sales heads would complain that there's a 6-page proposal form, but frankly, out of that 6-page proposal form, how much sense do you make out of that data is a big question. I think that's the journey that everybody is sort of struggling with right now. Right, if you look at the entire customer journey roadmap, right from acquisition, there is a touch point we have with them at the time of renewal. A lot of our customers don't claim, so only 6% customers claim, right? So any kind of engagement, interaction with them is only at the time of renewal, and that to a large part distributor plays, in most cases in offline channels. So you have these journeys in parts and you have data in parts. So we're doing 3 types of things. So there is data accumulation, which you have, which is existing data, but there's also a large amount of customer health data which comes to us, which is not used in any form or fashion for, let's say, marketing purposes or growth purposes today, but can be. So that's the second stage. And then, of course, we have CLTV models that we build around that, and that's at very initial stages, sounds like a fancy word, where you really analyze the lifetime value of a customer. Cross-sell, upsell is fairly limited in industries like health because, from a share of wallet perspective, he'll buy 1 or maximum 2 products with you. It's more in terms of upsell that we can drive. But that data, and then that data from a profitability and a risk lens is what we look at to create lookalike. So it's not just a share of wallet lens for us, it's also a huge risk lens that we carry on data.
Wonderful. There's just one aspect that I'll come back to in just a bit and ask you. You talked about offline data and a lot of it being at the distributor level. After I go around once, I'll certainly want to touch upon that because there's an interesting online-offline play here which I would love to talk about. Anuradha, why don't you go next?
So, while what we do on the online channel, we did talk a lot about data being quite siloed and being available in a lot of systems. So that's typically the challenge we are also facing. Another challenge that we face is ours is an extremely intermediary-driven business, apart from the direct channel. And what really happens is the intermediary is really not willing to share customer data with you. And we have started almost a year back data mart journey, wherein we have started gathering all the data. And there is a lot of know your customer initiatives happening across channels, not just digital, of course. And we are trying to see how much we will be able to get, get customer data. Sure. So digital channel still is, as is trend everywhere, just about 3% of our overall business. And we do have a lot of data on the digital side. But the overall data strategy as such is to gather other channel data, get as much as possible to know the customer. And we have, like I said, we've started the journey on the data mart side, but we're taking it quite slow. The expectations are not really that high because, almost 10 years of having been in the digital space at Royal Sundaram, we have just about touched 100 crores last year, which is not very, fortunately only 30% of it is aggregator driven. And in spite of that, what I have seen in the last 10 years is it's a very slow journey and it's a lot of hard work. It's not as glamorous as it sounds. Yeah. And we've been going slow. But we've been moving. We've been progressing. We've been making a lot of progress. I wouldn't say we've been, the progress has been grown, like it's not in real huge steps or anything, but small little steps that we are taking. And yes, everything is now centered around data as far as our digital initiatives are concerned.
Wonderful. I'll come back especially to the expectations not being high part and sort of ask you why that's the case. But let me go to Daksh next. You've seen a lot of life insurance data at Aegon and prior to that at ICICI Pru Life. How is it actually going?
So it's a good question upfront. I come basically from the data side of things rather than the marketing side of things. So my perspective is probably a little bit different. So I start from the data and build up as to what we can do with it. Yes, we all have a data in silos kind of problem. It's there to some degree and extent, probably a large degree and extent almost everywhere. Only some people are starting to now clean it up and are starting to say that, hey, we're happy with where we are on a single view of data, at least on the enterprise side. Especially because in financial services, we saw there's a huge amount of enterprise systems which have some part of the customer journey, some part of the customer experience, some part of the customer view. And bringing all of that together is extremely challenging because some of them are legacy, some of them just don't dump out data, and some of them give it in real time, some of them give it in batch. So it's a really difficult process on that side. But there's a lot of work that has been going on, the whole data warehousing, data lake practice. It's been evolving over a period of time, and I think some people are starting to do it really well. I think I'm fortunate that where we started in ICICI Prudential today, where we are in Aegon, I think a lot of those problems are under control. We have probably 70-80% of what we want altogether. Of course, incremental data always brings with it great amount of richness, and you kind of reach an inflection point. The more data you have, it starts creating network effects, and it starts becoming even more powerful. So adding the third set of data to two sets of data suddenly makes it as good as four types of because there's that many more connections you can make. So that's on the enterprise side. I think where a CDP helps is that it takes care of a lot of the online side of things, the digital side of data. Because enterprise systems are oriented a little bit differently. They need to be more accurate. They need to be more exhaustive. And online side of things are more fast. The velocity is much more. Variety is a lot more. So both of these actually work in synergy extremely well, and which is why while I'm very comfortable with the data warehouse, data lake, and having that sense of 360-degree view, I depend on having a CDP to ensure that that entire view is completed. And building the synergy between these two is really then when things start becoming extremely interesting, useful, exciting. So that's where we are on the data side and building a customer 360 one view, and of course on the activation side, then the CDP brings in all the various channels that we actually want to reach out to. Those come plugged in out of the box. So that really helps.
Got it. And Jayamit, from a security standpoint, it's often, at least to me, it's very intuitive. Because maybe I've been exposed more to insurance and banking, what some of the data types are, but securities presents a very interesting set of data possibilities. What's your take there?
Yes, securities is in a unique position. So what happens is that for most of us probably on insurance or any other space, how many insurance policies can you sell to a customer? So the transaction velocity at some point of time, am I audible? Yeah, okay. Yeah. Transaction velocity at some point of time tends to taper. But in the broking business, there is no such thing such as tapering of transaction velocity. As long as you enjoy making that trade, you can buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell, buy, sell as many number of times as possible. So we have customers who are doing multiple trades every day. There are guys who are doing thousands of trades every day. So we believe that data has an interesting challenge. The interesting challenge is the way to make it relevant on a per second basis. Now, when you're doing stuff like creating transaction velocity, you need to match it with data velocity. So the challenge then becomes an infinite amount of data that you're able to process and digest. So we're trying out various creative situations where if the amount of data that one can get is on world economy, on Indian economy, Indian rupee, what the hell is Trump tweeting, to what is happening around on your quarterly results, to what's happening on the news, to what's happening on your stock, and people like you're doing. So these various different things come in. It is so complex that if I start processing it, the cost of processing it and storing it becomes humongously large. So we're trying to see if we can pre-digest it, if we can try to see if we can pre-digest genomes and keep and try and make it sense out of it. Now we're at an interesting stage. 3 years back, all of the data that we were, all of the data that was being generated was data exhaust. So we're just throwing it out and we didn't even know what to do with it. Now we're in a different stage. Now we are in exhaust data. So we want to exhaust all the possible sources of data, put the damn thing inside and make sense out of it. One thing we realized very quickly, so when we went from phase 1 to phase 3, we realized we don't need phase 2. So one of the things we're trying to do right now is trying to build a data analytics platform which has no business intelligence built into it. So we realized that we don't want to know what the customer is doing. We don't want to know what his profiles are. We don't want to know what kind of segments he falls into it, because they are so numerous and the velocity is so high that knowing it will cause too much problems. So we're trying to build in rules and we're trying to build in algos that try and address it and learn on their own, as opposed to understanding what the hell my customer is doing. Your job is to, A, get all the possible kinds of offers or reactions or rules in place that if this happens, what are the different things that what you can offer to a consumer? Either it's news, it's information. So we call it ROI, research, offers, and information. So research that we talk on stocks, offers that we have a broad list of offers where there is a cost payoff, and information on the market on information. What to optimize to send whom? Don't even use your brains. Just pass it on to the machine and they'll probably figure it out better than what you can. And understanding it is going to take too much effort, too much cost, and finally no value. So we're experimenting with a true black box. In a year's time, I'll probably tell you whether I have a job or not.
I'm sure you will. But you started touching upon AI, which I do want to cover, and I'm not going to leave you at the basics. I will make you deep dive into some of these things, what you're exactly doing.
See, data bola na, udhar only my bullshit meter has gone up. Now, moment you say AI, ML and all of that, no, all of us in the room will start talking even more bullshit. So you can keep asking.
But let me come to the challenges part. Each of you expressed it in different ways. Anika, you talked about offline data, and you talked about how intermediaries are really holding on to a lot of data, and I think Daksh, you touched upon multiple systems being present. So what are the challenges that you're seeing, and how are you trying to, what sort of technologies are you trying to adopt to solve some of those challenges?
So I think the first challenge that we're trying to solve is at the input level itself. When we talk about offline data now, I think that's pretty much going off the table in the next 12 months or so, because in the last 18 months, even our agency channels, banker channels, everywhere, you get data in digitized forms, right? Because you've got apps now where the agent is giving you data in digitized formats. From a customer contactability point of view also, there are certain mandatory steps we've taken. Hopefully if Aadhaar comes in, all your KYC issues and everything else gets sorted. At the input level, there are a lot of things that are being done. We are also trying various innovations. So we tried something called an anytime health machine with one of our bank partners recently. What it does is it gives you a simple health assessment and basis that offers you a policy instantly. It gives me health data, it gives me customer data in a digitized format, and it allows me to market going forward to that customer. So at the input stage itself, we are trying to get data in the right formats. You're also trying to create products and propositions which allow you more data capture, which the customer is willingly giving to you. So we've got a new product right now, which is called Go Active, where we are actually telling the customer that we've got everything for you on the digital platform. So you come to us, you book your OPD online, you book your annual health checkup online, everything is there, you have a health locker there. So my problem of data being there in various pockets and then trying to make sense of it in a data mart and then predicting. So at the input stage only, we are correcting a lot of this stuff. We're working, of course, with you then on the entire remarketing piece and actually reducing cost in a big way. Because if you look at insurance, we pay claims. There are large distribution costs involved for us. So any margin of play on cost is a big play, even on small businesses like ours. So there, whatever we are doing in terms of delivering cost efficiencies help, especially on persistency and renewals.
Yeah.
If that starts coming through free channels versus push channels and paid channels, that becomes a big cost save for us. So we are using that in a big way. When we talk about dirty words like AI, for example, they actually make our life very simple in, let's say, a claims process today. And that's a journey we are starting on this year and hopefully will complete in the next 12 to 18 months. We work with 5,000 hospitals today. All the bills that come from hospitals, they're not integrated. They do not have CRM systems to integrate with us. So there's a guy sitting there manually trying to figure out what is payable in this bill and what is not payable in this bill. There is manpower cost, there is overcharging, there is a lot of those issues. But simple technologies on AI today are helping us digitize, and at least, with digitized tariffs being available with top 100, 200 hospitals, we solve that problem. So for us, a lot of, yes, growth and acquisition play, but a lot of cost and efficiency plays are also involved when we talk about our overall data strategy. And third, of course, is customer experience. And when I spoke about GoActive, for example, when we say that the customer is only claiming 6% customers are claiming, so once in 3 or 4 years, he's coming to you for renewals. Most likely he's not coming to you, either going to his agent or just coming to your website and giving you a quick NEFT payment or ACH if he has it. Then how do you really engage with him? So, products like GoActive, we've integrated with wearables now. So we have data there and we are trying to offer discounts to the customers. Now it's anybody's guess in the room of saying, if he gives me if you give me your health data, I will be able to keep you healthy. Or if you're a person who intends to stay healthy and is uploading his health data, chances are that you will, not get diabetes, not get hypertension. That hypothesis is yet to be proven. But yet we are offering up to 20% discount to these customers just to get that data in and just to engage with these customers and see what's the upside that we get. So those are the kind of things that we are working through in the
Very
business.
interesting. So I think the takeaways is fix it at the source, definitely. Latch into structure places where unstructured data is coming in, which is basically, in this case, from the hospitals potentially. And the third one definitely seems to be incentivize customers to give a lot of data and bring it in. So that's phenomenal. Thank you very much. And Anuradha, coming to you again, you talked about intermediaries holding a lot of data and how, as you're embarking on your data journey, there isn't really a very high expectation. Why is that? Is there something unique to general insurance, and or what are some of the challenges that you're experiencing?
So I would be very honest about, like I said, 3% is what we are right now in the digital channel. And what is my data size? So that doesn't give me a lot to play around. Okay. What I do right now has a very, very huge teleassist component. And we are, whatever new we are trying, there's a lot of things that gets defeated by the call center. Okay. So the other part of it is I found that doing a cross-sell or an upsell campaign on through your email channels or your SMS channel, it hasn't given me the kind of lift that it gives, the lift that I experience if I actually give the data to the call center and ask them to start working on it. Okay. So yes, it's a tedious process, and there's a lot of stress on productivity and things like that, and that is, call center is a different ball game altogether. But I'm not very sure, how much of, in spite of a lot of claims by a lot of companies, aggregators included, I'm glad you're not working for Cowfox anymore. So
I'm not proud of it, I think.
So in spite of a lot of players claiming that there is pure e-commerce happening, I wouldn't say there's a huge percentage of pure e-commerce happening. So 95% would be tele-assisted. So hardly 4 to 5% will be pure.
And do you see that changing over time? Or I mean, of course, it's 3% now, but let's say if you sort of look at a next 4 to 5 year horizon, do you see that tilting in a big way, or do you see a more sort of gradual shift towards digital, or do you not see that happening at all?
No, so I definitely see a gradual shift towards digital. And there is a lot of, I mean, apart from what, I mean, digital marketing is a very, very, very small part of the entire digital game. Like everyone is, I'm sure, aware by now. And what we are doing as an organization is there are a lot of digital initiatives being run by multiple teams. And that, I think, once it takes shape and we have the right people and the right processes in place, we will be able to make some shift, maybe in a couple of years.
Couple of years, okay, got it. Thank you. Daksh, coming to you. And I think the specific thing that I want to drill down on was the notion of multiple systems and really being able to bring all of that data together. What are some of the sort of big learnings you have and and that you could potentially pass to the audience here?
Learnings is, and you're right. I mean, that's one of the biggest problems that not just I face, but the marketers face, because I face it. Is getting all of the data together from different systems, and the problem that happens, is that things keep changing. So even what you'd ideally want to do is start at the top. What is my most important system? And start integrating them and building it in. To do that, of course, what you need first of all is a properly thought out data architecture, which can deal with stuff not just today, but for all the kinds of possible data that will come in tomorrow, and at any kind of velocity that it turns into subsequently. So that architecture, of course, has to be thought through. Beyond that, it's work. Building each data pipeline from each data source is work. And which is fine to do. You start at the top and you go down. But what happens is that certain data sources keep changing. The website changed, the data layer and the tags all went haywire. So what do you do? Yeah, so I took that example.
I can see.
I took that example because it will resonate with people over here. But,
of course.
I can say the same thing for almost any other kind of data source. In a table, a new column gets added, and then suddenly everything goes haywire. So that's how it works on the data integration side. But that's life. You have to. So I don't call that a problem really. It's life. You have to deal with it. You have to keep doing. I think what I actually consider, and I won't call it a problem, but what is it that keeps us up, and what we really need to work hard on, is that the experiences that customers are getting in the world from non-financial players is just changing by leaps and bounds. We have Netflix, we have Amazons, and they've started expecting that from their financial services. You need to excite me, you need to interest me, you need to engage me in the kind of way that they are. And that's a little hard for us because we don't have as many signals as other kind of players have. So how do you cut the clutter? How do you create an experience that really makes things exciting for them? And therefore they say that, hey, this is the guy, he's managed to catch my attention. He knew what I wanted at the time I wanted. Let me go with him. So that's hard. That's really tough. So omni-channel, segmenting it into enough number of segments, having a message. It's actually from a data point of view, it's probably actually easy for me to create a whole lot of segments. Do we have enough messages to give them? Will we get them through all our regulatory, content creation, hoops in time to be able to do A/B tests for enough of them? So those are, I think, the sort of things that actually we spend a whole lot of time on.
Got it. Thanks. Jayamit, coming back to you, obviously you talked of 2 or 3 things here. One is the notion of not putting customers in any segment and let sort of algos figure that out for you. And you also talked about the ROI framework, which relates to some extent to the messaging part of it, right? But one thing which I do want to ask you a little bit more, which I think Ravi also touched upon, is that if there is one place where probably enough data and enough algo and enough AI is not going in right now, or maybe is not helping, is the when part of it, which is when do you really try and get these messages in front of the customer? What's your take? Are you doing anything at all in that direction? What sort of what sort of things have you tried and what results have you seen in terms of the timing of it?
There is some science to when. But the problem of that is that a market start at 9, end at 3:30. So there is a time element to it, and our data, there are two parts to it. So after 3:30, you're in a different mood, and between 9 to 3:30, you're in a different mood. So we try and change accordingly, but we realize vague things, and we see slowly that the when is going to get critical. But our understanding so far is that when is still a later stage problem. It's an optimization problem. It's not an immediate problem. The first problem is getting the right consumer, the right data to start with. And in our business, we just say as soon as it comes, ship it, because the time value just deteriorates extremely fast. But we've realized funny things, like if it's a fundamental analysis thing, we realize once a week, Friday sham ko tum bhejo, is good enough. People read because the time value is 2 months, but you send it. You don't want hot off the press by Colgate-Palmolive. You don't mind it. I want to see it aram se. You send it on Friday. The open rates you see on Saturday, Sunday, but the clicks you're seeing on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So as long as you're relevant, like we keep having this joke internally. We're getting into this major analytics platform. We're trying to do this great thing of when do we send which customer, what data, trying to build a genome and shit like that. And we said, like, you know what, we are laughing internally. You do this entire thing and you get 80% wrong. 80% completely freaking wrong. Yet you will do a great job. Because what is happening currently, you have only two choices. Send all data to everybody, which you would have seen, मेरे को 7 browser push notification आया, 16 emails आया, मेरे को 22 email SMS आया. How many of you got my own customers getting affiliate, hey, open an account again, all of that shit. So you'll get all of that. I'm saying you just put some damn science to it. Get it 80% wrong. At least you will reach out to with some periodicity, and your bosses will agree that this is okay. Some science is saying that this periodicity agrees. So basically some customers will get 4 updates instead of 6 updates, and they will start acting on it. Slowly as they build up, you start building their profile, and the when will get sorted over a period of time. So my honest thing over here is, you put as much science in it, it will just help you make some sense out of it, and over a period of time, it will start forming patterns which are actually material. Before that, it's BS.
So and maybe a question to all three of you now, which is, he talked about the when part of it and trying to drive some of that. But let's also talk about the channel part of it, right? What channels work, and how do you know what's the right time to target a user on which channel? Is there any sort of insights that any of you have on this area?
So if you ask me, I think I tend to agree with him on the first point and also on this one, because that intelligence you build over a period of time. If you ask us today, when you have limited contactability, then you are setting, what are you doing? You're sending SMSs, emails, you're sending push notifications. That's all that you have right now. Over a period of time, that repository gets built and you tend to optimize. So I think it's pretty much the same answer to this one as well.
Got it.
Can I have a shot at it?
Yes, yeah, go ahead.
What we're trying to do, exactly, we're just trying to do this random science where we say, what is the science of marketing we understand? We understand reach and frequency. So we know, okay, you have to reach 50% of your audience, 60% of your audience at an X frequency, 3, 4, 5 OTS, dekhne ke liye. We're just thinking, and we don't have the answer yet, that if we start building reach curves on the communication that we send. So, if you say ki these many browser push notifications I sent, and you try and match it to how many clicked, you're going to be in trouble. Because you will miss out certain things. So if you're able to say ki I'm going to send a browser push notification, that's one frequency of 1. That reached 20% of my audience. Then I send the email, and so many opened. That is another X% of audience and second frequency. Then I did a SMS. Then I did a reminder on something else. So if I'm able to plot And then I'm able to say, keep within this reach curve, this now seems to be where I'm getting response. And it depends for people, and it's going to be dependent on the kind of messaging you want him to do. If you want him to change your habit, change his habit, your frequency needs to be higher, your reach possibly lower. But if it's something that you want him to do more of, you want higher reach and possibly lower frequency. We're trying to take this system, put it into our platform and try and say, can I plot a reach curve? If I'm able to plot a reach curve, and if I'm able to see at this point it works, then you have an answer. Till then, if you measure the efficacy of one system by itself, you'll probably miss out on some very good systems and come back and say, okay, SMS is dead, email is dead, nobody sees my VPN, not enough people are clicking on it, app push notification mein nahi chal raha hai, app personalization mein I don't know how it's going to work. But if you plot it across, some interesting data tend to emerge.
Very interesting. Very interesting take on this, actually. Yeah. Daksh, any point of view on this?
So I think one part, of course, is tracking campaigns and figuring out what messages work with which segment. So therefore, I should send him with this reach frequency and things like that. I think what might be a holy grail and what I would like to see more of happening is that if we treat communication channels almost as a conversation piece, as almost like a conversation. So based on what he did with an earlier email, if he opened it, there is a follow-up mail happening, which kind of builds up on the earlier mail. If he kind of clicked on a particular link in the SMS, it's then followed up with so you kind of get away from the when, what, and you start having. Are we in a position to start having conversations, customized conversations with individual customers
Exactly.
based on what they have been doing. So rather than treat this like a broadcast mechanism, we kind of treat it like 50 or 100 or 1,000 separate conversations happening individually with each customer. Is I think where we would like to take this.
Very interesting. Yeah. So just sort of changing tracks a bit, any conversation on data is sort of incomplete without maybe addressing the elephant in the room, which is obviously privacy. And I think, as I said before, we live in a post-GDPR, post-Cambridge Analytica world. I think David also in his session earlier talked about financial services, especially being one of the industries that's hit by lack of trust. What does it, I know that in India in general, if you think about it, maybe the awareness of data and privacy is maybe a little lesser, but do you see that changing? What do some of these evolving regulations mean in each of your industries? How are you really looking at it? Anuradha, I'll start with you and then sort of work my way around.
So as such, there is a lot of stress on data privacy recently, not because of GDPR or Cambridge Analytica, honestly, but there is every now and then there is this some kind of a talk about some data getting leaked somewhere and that being being harmful in some way or the other. But as a company policy, there are very strict privacy norms that we've started following. But then I don't know how far that is going to be successful. The reason being that I'm sure we are going to start, that is going to become mandatory very shortly. Yeah. And customers' Aadhaar data lying around. How safe is that? So if it's going to be mandatory, the salesperson also will have access to that data. He's probably going to ask for it over a call or something. And so I don't know how far it's going to be successful, because implementation and enforcement remains a challenge. And given looking at the number of apps that we download, and the kind of permissions that we are giving, okay. So are we as consumers evolved to understand data privacy? I have my own doubts about it.
It's true.
So it might take a long time, but yes, we have woken up after this Aadhaar being one of the reasons. And we did realize that it's really not safe that this kind of data is lying around everywhere. And there are a lot of initiatives going around that.
Interesting. Anika, from your perspective, how do you see this?
So I think purely from a consumer point of view today, you live in a world where you cannot escape your data being shared or marketers coming to you. It's also about how much you choose to share and with whom. So that onus honestly is on the consumer. As a responsible brand and as a responsible business, we also have a lot of sensitive customer information, which includes person's medical records as well, right?
Yeah.
So there are enough and more, guidelines that are built in, systems built in for data protection. We also live in a very heavily regulated industry. So whether we like it or not, as marketeers or as insurers, there are stringent, sort of guidelines that come back from our regulator itself when we treat this data internally. If you ask me, are we ready as an organization, as a country? The answer is no. And as she said, even the consumer is not ready today. But that's one place where, I think most businesses would be at nascent stages today.
Got it. And maybe Daksh, to you, one question I would love to ask is, are you placing any expectation on vendors to comply? Because obviously a lot of the things that Anika and Anuradha talked about are probably proactive things that are happening inside of the organization, right? But obviously a lot of data, especially in a cloud sort of situation where things are going SaaS, there is a lot of data that goes outside of the organization as well. What does that mean? And does it actually influence your partner selection today, or will it actually even influence it going forward?
See, I'll answer this question a little bit differently, and I'll create a difference between data security and data privacy. These are two very, very different things. I think what you're asking about is data security, and that, of course, is the answer. Of course, is a no-brainer. I mean, it's written into all our contracts. It's written into everything. There cannot be any compromise on data security. Anything that the customer treats as confidential or we treat as confidential cannot get leaked out in the open, and there are measures around that. So that's, I don't think there's a yes or a no or a gray area over there. Coming to data privacy, my guess, my feeling is, and this is now a philosophical question about data privacy, is that I think it goes a little bit like a pendulum. When a few things happen, like the Trump election or like Cambridge Analytica, suddenly there's a lot of concern about data privacy, and we get something like GDPR. And the outcome of that was I got 20, 25 emails, and really nothing changed. So I don't know whether GDPR is going to change anything in any material manner. But what is going to happen is, I think customers are going to start figuring out that if I want a customized experience, if I want services where I feel like the person who's providing me services knows me, they're going to have to give up this notion of data privacy. Because everything said and done, people are leaving their digital traces all over the place. We are using them in perfectly legal manners. So retargeting, it seems spooky, but only the first time that you see it. Beyond that, people start expecting it and understand that the way it works. And particularly for newer generations of people who are coming onto the internet, it's probably less and less of a concern. So I think it's probably a little bit reactionary, the whole data privacy thing right now. But longer term, I think people will understand that this is how it is. I mean, if you want to continue evolving on customer experience, the price for that is, and I don't think anybody will mind in the longer term.
That's interesting. Jayamit, your view on this?
What I kind of consider is that data per se there is a lot of noise around it, and a lot of consumers over here, we understand, and therefore we rightly so make a huge hue and cry. The average customer, sadly so or rightly so, cares an F. So what we kind of see, so there are 2-3 things. One is data theft. You have to be sure about it. If data theft happens in your firm, you're in trouble, and you have no reason to exist. That's fine. The bigger problem is not data theft, it's data heft, where we as marketers are not responsible towards that data. So if I know your data and I come back to say, hey, I know you bought this, therefore you buy this. Now I don't like that as a consumer. Or now I know exactly this is the time you trade, or right now I know you're in the car because I surreptitiously went and captured from your location, from your app, and now I know I'm sending this. Now when you make it obvious and silly and painful, the customer is going to hate it. So that's your heft issue. If you're right about it and you're relevant about it, I have this thing that forget Google, my maid knows more about my family and me and everything, and we probably like it. The driver knows much more. So if I just come, I'm tired, and we get into the car, and the driver knows better than to switch on his damn music. You know, that's a different story. And I come and say, Ashish ke ghar jana hai. And he knows exactly which Ashish, what it is, it's a Wednesday night or whatever. So you want your people to know. You want services that affect you to know you. But they also know very well how to use it. So he doesn't come out with a big placard that says, hi Jamed, today you're going, I know today is Friday night, you're going to the bar. It's not, I would hate that. But if he knows exactly which hotel or restaurant that we often go to, it makes it relevant. That's when the consumer really doesn't care an F and he really likes it. So the question between theft, heft and F is something that marketers need to understand and try and figure and try and write that balance. If you step on the wrong side, it's like the famous Supreme Court judge who said that I don't know how to define porn, but if I see it, I can tell you it.
Yeah, definitely. So I think the key takeaway from that part of the session definitely seems to be that relevance can rebuild trust. So done right way without spamming and latching onto relevance in the right way definitely builds trust. Let me throw it open to the audience here. Any questions? Anything that you would like to ask to any of the panel members? Yeah, please go ahead.
You mentioned something on the lines of digital marketing and contact center and that being a disruptive activity. So could you elaborate what are the challenges that you want to highlight as far as contact center operations are concerned?
So let me just repeat that. So the link between, if I get it correctly, digital marketing and the contact center.
That's
yeah.
Yeah, so what I really mentioned was whatever the innovation that we are trying, there are times when the call center defeats it. Okay, so when that's the connection that I was talking about. So we've been talking about basically creating segments and then making customized offers and then figuring out how many times the customer came back to us and basically sending some kind of data to the call center saying, hey, this guy is interested. He's probably been coming quite often and why don't you look at him? That kind of an information. When that information goes to the call center, we really don't know the guy who's handling that particular call, what mood he is in on that particular day, right? So, is he actually going to treat it as serious information and act on it, or he's going to defeat it? Okay. So, a very crude example are whatever marketing sources that we capture all these sources, right? About which whether it's paid search or it is organic or direct traffic which is brought in the lead and that goes into the contact center. And very often what we've noticed is they know that paid doesn't really convert as much as organic and direct does. Over a period of time, if he's been around for 6 months, he will figure that out. And he'll probably start cherry picking, right? And that again, one more example that I can give is remarketing. While it's hailed as a great tool, I am not a big fan. I will say it just drives up your cost. And as far as the contact center is concerned, it goes and sits as a duplicate lead.
Touche.
Right? So the agent is probably saying, what is he? He's probably just scouting around and he's not serious about it because now he's looked at a different plan or whatever. I mean, he's not, there is some change in the code or some such thing. And so that being the case, you know, that is one of the reasons I'm very gung-ho about using email and SMS as a channel for remarketing, right? So maybe my the cost that I have right now incur on search and other medium might, this might bring down the costs, right? But it remains to be seen. We've still not built the journey, and we've not tested out multiple journeys for us to say, yeah, email and SMS is going to work. We have built a couple of journeys. We've, like I said, we're going slow. We are, progress is there, but I won't say it's like great progress. What I would probably want to see is build multiple journeys, and then probably start looking at whether email works or SMS works or which channel works.
Any other questions? Anything anybody else? So before we close, one quick question to each one of you, and we'll end. So as you look at the next 12-month horizon, not more than that, okay, AI, hit or miss, and why?
So hit in specific use cases if you have them. Don't use them if, you know, just because it's a fancy word today. If there's a genuine use case, one must go for it and invest in it.
Got it. Okay. Anuradha.
Yeah, again, there has to be a specific use case. And there is one initiative that we are working on, and we're hoping that it's going to be a hit. It's on the claim side. And that is, if that works, then I'm sure I will count it as a hit. But like Anika said, you have to be very careful how you're going to use it.
Got it.
Big hit, I think it's. I think it's defined as basically automating any human decision making, and I think that's really where the world is going. And I think so it's intelligence, human intelligence, human decision making, but programmed into a computer. So I think it's been happening, and it's going to continue happening. It's now got a name. So it's always been a hit. It is a hit. It's always going to be a hit.
Hamesha hit.
It's a big hit purely for the simple reason if anything goes wrong, I tell my boss AI ne kiya.
Wonderful. I think that we can end on that high note. Anika, Anuradha, Daksh, Jaimit, thank you so much for your time. Can we have a big round of applause for these people? Thanks for joining.